Anyway, I'm here to present you the World Fraternity Report 2025. This is a project that we worked with a team that then Tracy will mention in the end, and is a report that will be carried out in the next years, every year. So what usually economists do? Economists like to measure things, because measuring is their way to observe reality. And they measured a lot of things. They measure GDP, well-being, poverty, inequalities, sustainability. We are the economy of Francesco. So what do we measure? Where we want to measure, as the report said, fraternity. But what is fraternity? Because this is one of the cases in which you have the so-called umbrella term. We all want a more fraternal world, this important dimension of social and economic life, but we don't agree on the definition of fraternity. If we go to the United States, Tracy, if I say fraternity, what would they say? What is fraternity in the United States?
If you do a Google image search in the States for fraternity, it looks like college.
College, right? I mean,
I ended up in some dark basements.
But, yes, but also within academia, if you say fraternity, a lot of debate happens. What are you talking about? Is the liberté, égalité, fraternité, the fraternity of the liberal tradition? Is the Christian Catholic version of fraternity? There are gender problems, why fraternity and not sorority? So our first work in this report was to define fraternity, doing a kind of scholarly literature review and say what fraternity is at the end of this review. And fraternity for us, and in this report, is a kind of relationship and a way to conceive and live and perceive this relationship. To make it concrete, if Tracy and I have a fraternal relationship that can be observed from the outside, from a third-person perspective, through certain characteristics that we put here, the objective features like reciprocity, openness, horizontality, inclusivity, relational goods, but it's also important how Tracy and I perceive and live our relationship to be deemed as a fraternal relationship. And these are the subjective features: communion, recognition, mutual care, affective tone, proximity. If you want to know more about these dimensions of fraternity, that is the first part of our report. That is the part in which we try to define and conceptualize fraternity. To give you an example, let me just mention quickly two dimensions: proximity and horizontality. Proximity is a subjective measurement of fraternity. Proximity means that fraternity is not only about community or communitarianism. You can have fraternal relationships even with strangers, with people that are very distant from you, physically distant, culturally distant, politically opposed to you. A fraternal relationship can emerge also in that case, and is a bit also the message of the Fratelli Tutti and Pope Francis' reference to the Good Samaritan and that kind of story. And then there is the objective feature of horizontality, because we know that fraternal relationship and relationships in general, they do not happen in a void. There are always circumstances in which this relationship takes place. There is history, there is politics, there is power, there are inequalities. And so, for us, fraternal relationships, they cannot live, they cannot flourish when there is too marked and too stark inequalities. And we were, I think, a bit smart in saying here that fraternity struggled to exist in context of stark and unjust inequality. Putting unjust inequality, it can give you the impression that we think that there are just inequalities. But in the report, we say that the only just inequality is the one that we are trying to reduce as much as possible. That's the idea. So this was the philosophical part, the conceptual part. But this is, again, not the philosophy of Francesco, it's the economy of Francesco. So let's move to how we actually measure fraternity. Tracy.
Okay, so I will mention this is a work in progress. We are unveiling a report to all of you today. It will be released on a yearly basis. It's going to be, I think at dinner you said something like this, right? It's going to be 150 pages. And Professor Bruni did this. And I said, oh, great, I'm going to be busy. So this is a work in progress. We do have a team of people that are working on this. We all give up our time and energy to be a part of it. But it's actually really fun to watch. It's like part of being a researcher is we get to do science, and like we're really doing science. Like on the last slide, there were citations for the academics. There were lots of text reviewed. So essentially what we did is we did like the full literature review of how different people defined fraternity. We narrowed it down to a short-ish list that you'll kind of see in a second. But so we did this matching, and this is a process. So this first part of the report that we're doing today, which is again like a smaller version of what we're eventually going to be rolling out on an annual basis, this smaller part was, hey, we came up with these things, and here are some data sources, which are, oh yeah, this is the most beautiful slide I've ever seen. So we found indicators that really exist in some of these very popular data sets that were on the last slide. But you can see, yeah, well, we're looking at the pretty slide still. It's really small, but essentially the left column were indicators that really exist in some of these data sets, and the right column was this exercise we did on the philosophical part where we think it matches. So essentially what our entirely female quant part of our team, by the way, which is very, yeah, there we go. As an underrepresented person at most economics conferences, it's very cool that this first part of the analysis was done by 3 women. Very cool. And this is a little bit inverted. So essentially, we're building a composite index. It's a weighted sum of z-scores. So it's basically we're taking the mean of these various indicators, and we're putting them together in, so what you're all going to see is this first bullet point, this equal weight index. I'm not going to talk too much about this because we'll just send you the report if you want to look more into this. But we also have done some robustness checks just to offset the equal weight index that we're going to show you. So that's that. So now we're gonna look at pictures because that's more fun than words. Yes. So here's the pretty histogram. So this is the distribution of the countries we had data for. So there are countries that we couldn't find data, again, based on the existing data sets. So what this 0 to 100, I want to note here, if you get a 0, it doesn't mean you're not fraternal. It's just this weighted index. It doesn't mean, it's just for comparison, right? And it doesn't mean 100 is the most fraternal society. But the average ends up being somewhere around 40. We can see the distribution's a little bit like right heavy. But most of the countries that we look at are between 30 and 50 on our newly created index. Again, 40 is kind of in the middle. But we have a pretty map, so everybody can find your own country and then make your own judgments, because we haven't gotten to that part yet. So it's from this index, we then calculated something we're calling the fraternal gap, which is how far away from the average countries are. So on the map, you can see here, the blue countries are those that are above average, so the scores tend to be higher, and the oranges, reds are below the average. Again, the average is 40-ish, right? So my people, the United States, we've got that pretty light blue, which means above the mean. The countries in white are the countries we don't have data for. So this is our fraternity gap. I'm just going to check to make sure I'm not missing anything, which is why I have this notepad here with me.
A lot of things to say, right? I mean, that's
right.
Yes,
I'm good at memorizing, but not that good. Okay. So on this particular index, those that are lower or below the average, there are countries like Ukraine, Myanmar, and Haiti, which are plagued by conflict and infrastructure that tends to be unstable. But we also have countries like Japan and Ireland and Lithuania who are arguably high-income countries. So again, this is an early stage analysis, so I haven't gotten into country specifics yet. And some of our like high countries that are some of these like high clusters tend to be islands, actually, which again, looking at some of the islands like Guam on the list are actually decent examples of circular economies where they do everything within the island. And what else am I missing? Okay, so we've got the gap. Okay, so from here, we did a principal component analysis, which is essentially we're trying to cluster countries based on all of these indicators that we pulled out of the Paolo part, which is just what I'm going to call it for now.
No.
So essentially what the analysis does is it groups like things together, right? So we get 6 different clusters, and I'm actually going to highlight the good parts about each of the clusters. Each cluster is weak in certain aspects, but given its Economy of Francesco, we're going to be positive today. So cluster 1, which is on the left here, and you can see how much of each, like I guess the thing on the right, that we have. So the first cluster tends to rank high in things like mutual care and inclusivity. The second cluster is ranking high in communion and openness. The third cluster is ranking high in equality and tolerance. The fourth cluster is ranking high in horizontality and local solidarity. The fifth cluster is ranking high in emotional care and reciprocity, also with strong communion. And the sixth cluster has strong family ties. So we did a little bit of a regional analysis as well, what countries are ending up in what clusters. So our first cluster with the high mutual care and inclusivity includes a lot of European countries and also a lot of the Asian countries. Our second cluster, which is high in communion and openness, we only have 2 countries. It's the Maldives and the United States, 2 very similar countries. Our third cluster is, again, denoted by equality and tolerance. That's also European countries and Canada. Our fifth cluster, our emotional care and reciprocity, also strong communion. That's where a lot of our Asian and Latin American countries are coming in. And again, the sixth cluster with strong family ties, that's our African countries and Oceania so far. Okay, so we've got one more pretty box kind of cluster map for you. So one of the themes we've been talking about during this conference time of togetherness is well-being, right? Economists love to measure things. So there's lots of different ways of measuring well-being. And GDP is something we don't need to get into, but that's one of these really, really popular measures, right? So we wanted to see if any of our indicators of fraternity was correlated with GDP, and this is showing us it's not. If anything, there's weak correlations in some instances, but largely our newly created index of fraternity, again, we're not using it instead of these other measures of well-being. We think it can be used in a complementary way of understanding societies better and ultimately trying to highlight well-being a little bit better. But so it's not closely linked to GDP.
We are quasi to the
end. No, go ahead.
Yes? Now, the one thing that maybe we should also mention, because obviously all these graphs are in our report.
Yes.
All the explanations are there, especially the technical, empirical one that I struggled a lot to understand in certain parts, but it was very fun. Some data, some dimensions of fraternity that we have, like affective tone, we didn't have data available on those. So in the fraternity reports 2026, 27, 28, 29, we will collect and create the data to capture those missing dimensions. So probably the map will look a bit different, but this is something very important. This is a pilot that we are doing, and we are
in the spirit of work in progress, I'm sending this QR code, which I'm only 80% sure is going to work,
yes,
to members of the assembly who are in the crowd. So in order to use surveys, you have to pilot them first and make sure your survey instrument is good. So some of you have probably already seen this survey if you're on the Economy of Francesco WhatsApp groups and the listservs. But if anybody wants to help us out and help pilot our survey, I'm going to distribute this right now to Assembly members.
And you know what this survey is about, though, is the real simple question: what is fraternity for you? Because we want also to make better the 2026 report, trying to mix what academics, philosophers, and so theologians thought about fraternity with also what people think about fraternity, entrepreneurs, change makers, and so try to rephrase also those dimensions to have a really representative fraternity index. And then I leave you the conclusion to you. Yes?
I think, well, I mentioned before, fraternity, I think personally has been kind of like a weird word for me. I used to work in like a finance company in Lower Manhattan, and I was surrounded by frat bros, and that's not a term of endearment. So I think since my involvement in this project, and I think others too, I've been struggling with like this word that means this particular thing in this corner of the world. But we want to take this opportunity to take the word back, and we want to use it the way that St. Francis is using it. So we hope that this report, and hopefully the involvement of all of you, we can take the word back. We treasure fraternity. So we measure what we treasure, and we treasure what we measure.
Why are you looking at me? You said it very well.
I definitely was not just told to say that.
Look at the author. That's very good. Maybe let's mention also other people who work with us.
Yep, we have some other, it's Paolo and I,
Valentina,
Rotonti,
Serena,
Serena
Dalila.
Mateo's maybe here.
Prof. Bruni also.
Also the youngest member, she's been very vocal, now she's in the back. Yeah. But Maria and Stella are also on our team, and Stella's been in some of our meetings.
Yes. If you want to know more about this report, our website is going to be available for everyone. Send us your comments, feedback, and if you want to get involved in this, the door is open in whatever capacity you can contribute.
In the spirit of fraternity.
Yes, thanks
perhaps.
a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.